You were never told the whole truth about reality, not by your teachers, not by your religious leaders, not even by the voices inside your own mind. You were given a version of life that was linear, mechanical, and defined by boundaries that made you feel small. You were taught to look outwards for answers, to trust authorities, to stay within the lines. But something deep within you has always whispered that this can't be all there is, that life is more than just the ticking of clocks, the grind of routine, and the fragile narrative of beginnings and ends. That whisper is not your imagination, it's a memory from a part of you that never forgot what you truly are. That part of you is awakening now. In 1963, something remarkable happened. A woman named Jane Roberts sat at a small table with a Ouija board and her husband, expecting nothing more than mild entertainment. But what emerged changed the course of spiritual understanding for anyone willing to listen. A presence, an energy, a consciousness began to speak through her. It called itself Seth. And from the very first words it was clear. This wasn't a ghost or a figment of imagination. This was a being from beyond the veil of space and time, a multidimensional essence that had long transcended physical form, now speaking directly to the parts of us that are still awake enough to remember the truth. But Seth didn't come to predict the future. He didn't come to convince, convert, or control. He came to remind you of what you already know, deep down beneath the layers of conditioning. You are not here to survive. You are here to create. You are not just a product of your past. You are the painter of infinite timelines. You are not at the mercy of reality. You are shaping it with every thought, every belief, every pulse of intention that moves through your consciousness. You were born into a world that convinces you from the moment you arrive that your power lies outside of you, that meaning is something to be found, not something you already are, that God is something or someone separate from you, that the soul is a mystery reserved for holy men and scholars. But what if that's all backwards? What if you're not meant to find truth, but to remember it? What if the veil between the physical and non-physical is thinner than you've been told? What if it never existed at all? Seth didn't speak in riddles or codes. He didn't demand blind belief. His message was clear, consistent, and rooted in a deep knowing that transcended human logic. You are a multidimensional being, right now, not someday after death, not in a past life you vaguely sense. Right now, even as you sit where you are, listening, watching, breathing, you are also dreaming, creating, and living in countless other dimensions of possibility. And it is your consciousness that weaves these dimensions together. It's easy to dismiss this idea at first. Your mind has been trained to look for proof that can be measured, repeated, dissected. But what if the proof is in your yearning? That deep ache inside you that says, I came here for something more. The moments when you feel as though time has paused. When synchronicity strikes so hard it takes your breath away. When you feel like you've lived something before, even though you've never been there. Those are not accidents. They are the echoes of your greater self calling you home. There is a gateway within you, and you've known it your whole life. Maybe you've glimpsed it in dreams that feel more real than waking life. Maybe it shows up in moments of déjà vu, or when you look into someone's eyes and feel like you've known them forever. Maybe it's in your hunger for truth, your refusal to settle, your unshakable sense that there's more. That gateway has no lock. It opens the moment you allow yourself to question the story you've been told. The story that says you are just a body, that your mind is nothing but neurons firing randomly, that your soul, if it exists, is something far away, hidden in clouds or galaxies or dimensions too abstract to care about your daily struggles. But what if I told you that your soul is right here with you? That the part of you listening to these words is the same part that whispered them before you were even born. You've been taught to seek spiritual truth in temples, in books, in rituals, but the greatest revelations come not from outside, but from within. And this is the message Seth brought to the world, not as a prophet, not as a savior, but as a mirror. a mirror reflecting the vastness of your being, the eternal nature of your essence, and the sacred role you play in this grand unfolding of consciousness. This is not about worship, it's about awakening. You are not a mistake, and your life is not random. The challenges you've faced, the pain you've endured, the questions you've carried, all of it has brought you to this moment, a moment where you can begin to remember, not as an idea or a belief system, but as a living truth vibrating in every cell of your body. You are divine, you are eternal, and you are not separate from the source that created you. You are the source, dreaming itself into form. For too long, humanity has been asleep at the wheel of its own creation. You've been conditioned to believe in fate, in karma, in destinies written by forces outside your control. But Seth came to remind you that reality bends to your awareness, that every belief you hold is a command to the universe, that time is not a river dragging you along but a canvas waiting for your brush. And now, that canvas is in your hands. So the question isn't whether this is real. The question is, are you ready to remember? Are you ready to peel back the veil and step through the forgotten gateway? Not into another world, but into a deeper experience of this one. Because the truth Seth brought isn't locked in the past. It's alive in you right now. In the quiet moments when you pause long enough to listen, in the space between your thoughts, in the gentle, undeniable knowing that whispers, "You've been here before, and you came back for a reason." You've probably heard the name Seth whispered in certain spiritual circles, or maybe this is the first time you're encountering it. Either way, you deserve to know the truth. Not the myth, not the watered-down version, the truth of who or what Seth really was. Because once you understand that, something profound happens. You begin to understand who you really are too. Let's be clear from the beginning. Seth was not a ghost. He wasn't a disembodied spirit of a dead human looking for closure. He didn't belong to the world of haunted houses or seance parlor tricks. What Jane Roberts encountered, and what ultimately spoke volumes through her voice, was something far more advanced, far more intelligent, and far more intimate than that. Seth referred to himself as an energy personality essence, a being that had long transcended physical incarnation. But even that definition only scratches the surface. Because Seth wasn't a thing to be categorized, he was a presence, an awareness, a bridge between worlds. And here's where it becomes fascinating. Seth didn't appear in a flash of light or through a dramatic paranormal event. He emerged gradually, calmly, through Jane's willingness to open herself to a frequency of consciousness most people are never taught to access. He didn't arrive to prove his existence. He arrived to mirror your own. He came not as a savior or authority, but as a guide. A living reminder of the parts of you that exist beyond your name, your body, your lifetime. You see, you've been conditioned to think of communication as something that happens only through language. But there's a deeper kind of dialogue, one that takes place through vibration, resonance, alignment. That's how Seth spoke, not just through words, but through frequency. His message wasn't aimed at your logical mind. It was designed to reach the part of you that existed long before words ever did. When Seth spoke through Jane, something curious would happen. People wouldn't just hear the information, they would feel it. It was as if the words bypassed the intellect entirely and landed somewhere deeper, into a memory, an intuition, an undeniable knowing. You've felt this before. You've had moments where someone says something so true, so familiar, that it doesn't feel like you're hearing it for the first time. It feels like you're remembering it. That's what it was like to listen to Seth. And that's because Seth wasn't external. Not really. Yes, he spoke through Jane. And yes, his words were transcribed into books and tapes that people around the world still study today. But what matters more than the form he took is the space he came from. Seth existed, and still exists, in a plane of consciousness that is outside of time. A plane you have access to, whether you realize it yet or not. He didn't come down to deliver truths to a passive humanity. He came to activate a remembering, to awaken a latent awareness in you that has always known the truth. Think about this. What if you've never been alone? What if, throughout your life, you've been gently nudged, guided, even whispered to, but you brushed it off as imagination, coincidence, or random thoughts? Seth wasn't just a singular being. He represented a collective field of wisdom that every soul has access to, including you. What made Jane unique wasn't that she had special powers. It was that she listened, she dared to open the door. She allowed what wanted to come through to do so without fear, without pretense, without ego. And you can too. Because Seth wasn't just speaking to Jane, he was speaking to you. Even now, as you absorb these words, something within you is stirring. It's that subtle shift you feel when something resonates so deeply, it slips past your defenses and touches the core of you. That's not a coincidence. That's consciousness recognizing itself. That's your deeper awareness remembering the song it's always known. This is why Seth's teachings are not mere philosophies. They are activations. They are keys. They don't ask you to believe, they ask you to feel, to sense, to remember. And what they open within you is not new information, it is ancient knowing. The kind that can't be proven in a lab or validated by credentials, the kind that lives in silence, in stillness, in the space between your thoughts. You may wonder, why Seth? Why did this being choose Jane Roberts? Why speak through one woman in one place at one time? But when you ask that, you're still thinking in human terms, linear time, physical geography, cause and effect. But Seth didn't choose Jane in the way we choose breakfast cereal. Their connection was a convergence, a magnetic pull between frequencies, a sacred agreement that transcended the veil of space and time. Seth didn't come from elsewhere. He came from within, from the larger field of being that you are already part of. That's why he didn't speak in rigid religious terms or scientific jargon. He used the language that would awaken the most people in the most balanced way. Because his intention wasn't to build a following, it was to dismantle the illusion that you need a following. His message wasn't, listen to me. It was, remember yourself. And when you understand that, you no longer see Seth as an external teacher. You recognize him as a mirror, reflecting back the vast, infinite consciousness that you've always carried inside. It's tempting to put Seth on a pedestal, to say he was more enlightened, more powerful, more connected than the rest of us. But that would miss the entire point of his existence. Seth didn't come to show off what was possible for him. He came to show what's possible for you. He spoke as a representative of what you are becoming, or more accurately, what you're remembering you already are. And the only barrier between you and that remembrance is the belief that you're separate from it. But you're not. You're not just a name, a personality, a human moving through time. You are a multidimensional essence, living simultaneously in more realities than your current awareness can hold. And Seth's words weren't just information, they were echoes from one of those realities, reaching across dimensions to guide you back to yourself. Not the self you show the world, the self that knows, the self that sees, the self that never forgot. So ask yourself, what part of you is reading these words right now? Is it the personality with its doubts and worries and identity? Or is it something deeper, something timeless, something expansive, something watching your entire life unfold like a dream? That part of you knows who Seth is, because that part of you is where Seth came from. Not a ghost, not a spirit, not a teacher in the traditional sense. Seth is a frequency, a bridge between your current understanding and your infinite nature, and once you attune to that frequency, everything begins to shift. The boundaries of what's possible dissolve. The veil between the seen and unseen thins, and what you once called miraculous begins to feel natural. That's not a fantasy, that's your inheritance, and it's waiting for you to claim it. You've been taught to look up when you search for God, to bow your head, to raise your hands, to plead with something or someone distant and all-powerful. From childhood, the idea was planted in your mind that God was a being, a judge, a father figure seated on a throne beyond the clouds. He ruled with love, yes, but also with wrath. He rewarded obedience and punished sin. He was watching, always watching. And you, a fragile soul in a fallen world, needed to earn his favor. But what if none of that is true? What if the God you were taught to fear never existed at all? Not because God is unreal, but because the version you were given was never the full picture. What if the real tragedy isn't disbelief, but believing in a God so small, so limited, so human? What if the greatest illusion ever sold was the image of a masculine external deity who lives out there, separate from your life, separate from your body, separate from your breath? And what if that illusion wasn't innocent? It was engineered, designed, a story passed down to keep you kneeling, not awakening, a mythology that served not your soul but systems built to control it. Because here's the truth that's been buried for centuries. God is not a man. God is not a personality. God is not a being in the traditional sense of the word. God is not separate from you. God is not waiting to be worshipped or pleased or obeyed. God is not the Father in the clouds, nor the judge with a book, nor the ruler of heaven and hell. Those were symbols, metaphors. At best, they were limited translations of an infinite truth. At worst, they were distortions used to keep you disempowered, distracted and dependent. The real truth? You don't find God by looking up. You find God by looking in. You've carried the divine within you every moment of your life. Not metaphorically, literally. The very awareness that hears these words, the presence behind your thoughts, the stillness between your breaths, that is the face of God looking back at you. Not the you with a name, a story, a personality, but the deeper you, the presence that never changes, even as everything around it does. That is the space where God lives. You see, the idea of an external God creates hierarchy. It places you at the bottom and divinity at the top. It turns spiritual growth into a ladder, with someone else holding the rungs. And that model has kept billions trapped in cycles of guilt, shame, and unworthiness. But what if there's nothing to climb? What if you were never separate from God to begin with? What if your entire life has been a process not of becoming worthy, but of remembering that you already are? Seth once said that God is not a product, not a being, but a process, a continual unfolding, a living intelligence that expresses itself through you, and not just you, through every tree, every wave, every atom, every breath. God is not above creation, God is creation, and not as an abstract force, but as the very fabric of existence itself. Which means you are not part of God. You are not created by God. You are God in expression. Just like the wave is not separate from the ocean, it is the ocean temporarily shaped. You may hesitate to accept that. It might even feel blasphemous. That's how deeply the programming runs. But listen carefully. I'm not saying you are the God in its totality. I'm saying you are an expression of God's infinite being, just as valid, just as sacred, just as real. And every time you ignore that truth, every time you shrink back into unworthiness, you deny the very essence of your being. This is why ancient mystics across all traditions, long before religion was institutionalized, spoke in riddles and paradoxes. They said, I am that. They said, the kingdom of God is within you. They said, tattivam asi, you are that. They were not being poetic, they were being precise. But over time those teachings were buried beneath dogma. The mystical became doctrinal. The inward path was replaced with outer rituals, and the divine was placed on a throne, far, distant, unreachable, except through the permission of priests, prophets, and sacred texts. So you forgot. You forgot that when you speak, it is the divine that speaks through you. That when you love, it is God recognizing itself in another. That when you create, it is the infinite becoming form through your hands, your voice, your vision. You forgot that your body is not a temple. It is God embodied. That your emotions are not flaws, They are energy in motion, divine currents expressing the full spectrum of aliveness. You forgot that your thoughts shape the reality you walk through, that your intentions bend probability, that your presence shifts the vibration of every space you enter. You forgot because you were taught to forget. You were taught to fear your power, to distrust your intuition, to reject the very voice of God speaking from within you, and in its place you were given rules, labels, punishments. You were told to believe without question, to pray without expecting answers, to kneel without understanding why. But what happens when you stop looking for God as a father and start recognizing God as awareness? What happens when you realize that the voice you've been waiting to hear has always been your own? When you listen not with your ears but with your being, you begin to see that God is not a destination. God is not something you arrive at after death or through perfection. God is the breath you're taking right now. God is the stillness behind this moment. God is the infinite canvas upon which your every thought paints reality. And once you feel that, truly feel it not as an idea but as a knowing that fills your entire being, everything changes. Because now, you don't worship God. You live as God. You walk as love, you speak as presence, you create as consciousness itself. And suddenly all those old stories collapse. The fear of punishment dissolves. The striving ends. You stop trying to become something and realize you already are. You are not broken, you are not fallen, you are not less than. You are an aperture through which the divine experiences itself. And so is every other being you meet. That doesn't make you special, it makes you sacred, and it makes everyone sacred. This is the revolution that begins within, the reclaiming of the truth that was hidden in plain sight, not to create new hierarchies, not to build new religions, but to finally tear down the illusion of separation, the illusion that says God is up there and you are down here. That illusion is what keeps you small, but the truth sets you ablaze. Because when you finally recognize that the divine is not in the sky, but in your skin, your soul, your silence, you begin to live differently. You stop chasing, you start creating, you stop seeking permission, you start trusting your knowing, and you stop worshipping a God made in man's image and start honoring the God that is your image. And in that moment, the divine no longer feels far away. It feels like the breath in your lungs, the light in your eyes, the stillness in your heart, because it is. It always has been. It always will be. You've probably been told that you have a soul, that it's something hidden inside you like a secret jewel waiting to be discovered. The language sounds innocent enough, poetic even, but it carries a dangerous implication. Because when you believe you have a soul, you unconsciously separate yourself from it. You treat it like an object, a possession, a thing you can lose or earn or upgrade depending on how good you are. But that's not how this works. The soul isn't something you have. The soul is what you are. Not a fixed entity, not a static object, but a dynamic, ever-evolving flow of consciousness in motion. And you, right now, in this moment, are the soul becoming. You see, the human mind loves definitions. It wants to label, to categorize, to place everything neatly in a box. So we create concepts like the soul and try to define it as something clean and contained. But the soul refuses to be boxed. It is not a thing to be held. It is a process. An unfolding, an emergence, an eternal dance between being and becoming. Your soul isn't sitting quietly inside your chest like a dormant passenger. It is alive, stretching, pulsing through every thought you think, every emotion you feel, every experience you live. The soul is not the destination you arrive at once you're enlightened. It's the current that carries you through every step of your journey. This changes everything. Because if the soul is a process, not a possession, then you are not trying to reach your soul. You are expressing it right now, in your joy and your grief, in your love and your fear, in your clarity and your confusion. Every version of you, from the most grounded to the most fragmented, is the soul exploring itself. That means you cannot be separate from your spiritual nature. Even when you feel lost, even when you make mistakes, even when you don't feel spiritual at all, the process is still happening, the soul is still unfolding, and you are still sacred. Think about it. How many times have you believed you were off the path, that you needed to meditate more, heal more, purify more, just to get closer to your soul? But what if every detour, every shadow, every breakdown was part of the path itself? What if your soul isn't demanding perfection, but expansion? What if it's not calling you to be holy, but to be whole? Seth revealed something radical. The soul is not a finished product. In fact, it is never finished. It is not waiting for you at the end of your life with a final grade on your performance. The soul is continually expanding, always growing, always reaching into new realms of experience. It doesn't want to escape life. It wants to dive into it, to taste every flavor, to feel every emotion, to know itself through you in ways that only this incarnation could allow. And that means every moment, no matter how mundane or messy, is part of your soul's evolution. This idea might be hard to accept at first, especially if you were taught that spiritual progress means leaving the human behind, that enlightenment is about transcending desire, abandoning the body, escaping the illusion of matter. But what if your soul came here not to escape the physical world, but to play in it, to weave light through matter, to taste the richness of form, to bring consciousness into places it had never gone before? You weren't born to graduate into some final version of purity. You were born to explore, to experiment, to remember and to forget, only to remember again, more deeply this time. And yes, that forgetting is part of the process too. Every time you feel disconnected, every time you fall into fear or doubt or pain, you are not failing. You are unfolding. That pain is not a sign that you've lost your way. It's an invitation to go deeper into the process of becoming. Your soul doesn't need you to be flawless. It needs you to be present, to show up for the work of being human with honesty and courage and compassion. Because here's the truth most spiritual systems won't tell you. There is no finish line. No point at which you finally arrive and the journey ends. You are not here to be complete. You are here to keep evolving, to keep expanding into new possibilities. Even death is not the end, it's a transition, a shift in awareness, a continuation of the same process from a new vantage point. The soul doesn't graduate into stillness. It graduates into deeper levels of creation. And that's why you never complete your spiritual evolution. Because evolution is the very nature of the soul. The moment you believe you've reached the end, you've stopped listening. You've stopped growing. You've stepped out of the river of becoming and tried to build a house on the shoreline. But the soul doesn't live in houses. It lives in motion. It lives in change. It lives in every moment you choose to step back into the flow, even when it's terrifying. Especially when it's terrifying. So if you've been waiting to be ready, stop. You're already in it. If you've been waiting to become worthy, let it go. You already are. And if you've been waiting for your soul to show up, look in the mirror. It's been here the whole time, watching you, guiding you, loving you, not from above, but from within. The soul is not perfect in the way you've been taught to understand perfection. It is vast. It is wild. It is curious, and above all, it is free. It chooses experience over control, growth over safety, truth over comfort. So when life shakes you, stretches you, breaks you open, that's not failure. That's your soul in motion. That's the process doing exactly what it came here to do. You are not the end result of your spiritual journey. You are the journey itself. The path, the traveler, and the unfolding terrain. The soul does not want to be reached. It wants to be realized, over and over again, through presence, through breath, through the sacred art of becoming. So stop asking, have I found my soul? And start asking, how is my soul expressing itself in this moment? Stop waiting for the perfect version of you to arrive and begin honoring the divine process already happening within the imperfect one standing here now. because that's where the real magic is. Not in the destination, but in the unfolding. You are the soul. Not someday, not when you're healed, not when you're wise, but now, in your doubt, in your longing, in your laughter and your tears. The soul is not something you'll meet after death. It is something you'll live as long as you're willing to be fully alive. And if you can remember that, if you can trust that, you'll begin to feel it, not just as an idea, but as a current, a movement, a presence flowing through everything you are. The soul doesn't need to be found, it needs to be felt, and you are already feeling it, right now. You've lived your entire life inside a story called time, morning to night, birth to death, past, present, future. You've been taught that time is a river you float down, one direction only, no turning back, no shortcuts. It seems so obvious, so concrete that to question it almost feels absurd. But what if it's all been a trick of the senses? What if time isn't a line but a field? What if every moment you've ever lived and every moment you ever will live is happening right now? What if you're not moving through time at all, but time is unfolding around you like layers of a multidimensional fabric? This isn't science fiction. This isn't a metaphor. This is what Seth revealed over and over again. All time is simultaneous, not symbolic, not poetic, literal. You are not bound to a linear timeline unless you believe you are, and that belief, the belief that you are trapped in the forward motion of cause and effect, is one of the most profound illusions ever woven into human consciousness. You see, your physical senses are translators. They interpret vibration into sight, sound, touch, and perception, but they do it through filters that keep your experience focused, limited, digestible. You perceive time as linear because it's the most manageable way to engage with physical reality. But outside of this framework, beyond the body, beyond the conscious ego, time collapses. There is no past, no future. There is only presence, eternal, fluid, simultaneous presence. You don't remember your future because you've agreed not to. Your soul, operating on levels far beyond the intellect, chose to engage in this reality through the lens of before and after. But that was a choice, not a law. And once you begin to grasp that, something begins to shift, not just conceptually but vibrationally. Your awareness expands. You stop waiting for the future to deliver meaning, and you start reclaiming the power of now in ways most people never realize are possible. Think about it, how much of your suffering is tied to time. Regret lives in the past, anxiety lives in the future. Guilt, shame, longing, nostalgia, they all depend on the idea that time is moving like a conveyor belt you can't step off. But what if you could? What if time isn't a belt? It's a room with infinite doors, each leading to a different version of now. Not just the now you know, but the ones you haven't dared to imagine. And you have the power to walk through those doors, not by waiting, but by tuning in. When Seth said that all time is simultaneous, he didn't mean it as a theory to be debated. He meant it as an invitation, an opening, a revelation that could change the way you live every single day. You are not the effect of a past you can't change. You are the creator of timelines that are still alive. Every decision you make, every belief you hold, is not just reacting to the past, it's reshaping it. Right now you are influencing the past with your present awareness. Right now you are reaching into futures that already exist, choosing which ones to align with based on the energy you hold. This is where the teachings of Seth break the mold, because once you accept that time is not a straight line, your entire relationship with destiny begins to unravel. You start to realize that fate is not something handed to you, it's something selected by you, not once, but over and over, in each moment, with every breath. You are not moving toward the future is responding to your consciousness. It is organizing itself around your vibration, reshaping itself to match your expectation. This is not mysticism, this is mechanics, spiritual mechanics. That means your past is not fixed, your history is not set in stone. Yes, your memories feel solid. Yes, the events that shaped you seem undeniable. But memory is not truth, it's interpretation. A reflection of where you were in consciousness at the time. And that means you can change your past, not by altering facts, but by reclaiming the meaning, by going back, not through time machines, but through awareness, and meeting the younger versions of yourself with new eyes, new compassion, new light. You are not the victim of your past. You are its revisitor, its artist, its transformer. And when you begin to live that way, when you stop being a slave to clocks and calendars and start dancing with the eternal present, everything begins to realign. Synchronicity becomes normal. Manifestation accelerates. Healing speeds up. Why? Because you've stepped out of time's illusion and into your soul's truth. You've stopped counting hours and started cultivating presence. You've stopped measuring life by how many years you've lived and started measuring it by how deeply you've been. Time is not your enemy, it's your canvas. You don't need to run out of time. That idea is a spell, a deeply ingrained belief designed to keep you rushing, panicking, striving, always chasing, never arriving. But when you realize that every version of you, past, present, future, is still alive within the field of your being, you stop chasing and start listening. You begin to receive, and that's when the true miracles unfold. The you that succeeded is still here. So is the you that failed, the you that healed, the you that broke, the you that loved fearlessly, the you that stayed small. All of them exist, side by side, in the quantum field of your consciousness. You are not one of them, you are the awareness holding them all. And in any moment, you can shift your alignment, choose a new trajectory, access a new version of now. But to do that, you must be willing to let go of the tyranny of time. You must stop letting clocks dictate your value. Stop letting your age determine your worth. Stop believing that it's too late or too early or not the right time. Those are illusions, excuses dressed as wisdom. Time doesn't control you. You control your relationship with time. And when you choose to live from the soul instead of the clock, everything accelerates. You find yourself in the right place with the right people at the right moment, not because you planned it, but because you aligned with it. This is the path Seth pointed toward, not a rejection of the physical world, but a reorientation to its deeper laws. A way of living where you respect time as a useful structure, but you no longer believe in its limits. You use time, but you're no longer used by it. You allow it to help organize your experience, but you refuse to let it shrink your vision. Because here's the ultimate truth. Eternity is not something you arrive at after death. Eternity is now. And you can access it not by running faster, but by becoming still. By dropping into the spaciousness beneath the ticking clock. By remembering that who you are is not confined to a timeline. It is the field in which time appears. And when you live from that place, time bends, it opens, it listens, and it responds not to your schedule, but to your soul. You've been taught to trust your senses, to believe that what you see, touch, hear, and measure is the only thing that's real. But your senses are not neutral observers. They're interpreters, translating a much larger field of energy into something your mind can comprehend. And what they show you isn't the full picture. The chair you sit on, the phone in your hand, the body you inhabit. All of it appears solid, fixed, and predictable, but that's an illusion. At the smallest level of existence, there is no solidity, no fixed borders, just energy, vibration, movement. Matter, as you think you know it, is not a dead thing. It's not passive, it's not unconscious. Matter is alive, aware, responsive. You've never really touched anything, not truly. What feels like contact is just the interaction of electromagnetic fields repelling each other. What looks solid is mostly empty space. At the subatomic level, particles don't behave like little building blocks. They behave like waves, waves of possibility. They exist in a state of potential, not form. And what determines whether they show up as a particle with a specific location and trajectory? Logics of observation. Attention, consciousness. Your awareness doesn't just perceive reality, it helps shape it. And that's not philosophy, that's quantum physics. Seth revealed this long before modern science caught up. He taught that your thoughts and emotions don't simply exist inside your head. They radiate outward, interacting with the field of reality itself. Your belief is not just a lens, it's a command, a directive that tells energy how to organize itself. You are not separate from the world you observe, you are co-creating it in every moment. Every object you see is not just there because of some external law. It is there because your consciousness has agreed to it, focused upon it, and given it continuity. And this is where the veil begins to lift, because once you realize that matter is not inert, that it is aware in its own way, you start to see the world differently. You begin to understand why sacred objects carry vibration, why your home feels different after an argument or a prayer, why your body responds not just to medicine, but to intention. Atoms don't just follow physical laws, they follow meaning, they follow expectation, they follow belief. You are not stuck in a rigid universe of fixed laws, you are immersed in a sea of living potential. And what collapses that potential into form, what makes the wave become a particle, is your attention, your emotion, your energetic signature. This is why manifestation works. Not because you're ordering from the universe like a catalog, but because your inner world is instructing matter on how to express itself around you. This is the bridge between science and spirit, between the quantum field and your daily life. You are not a spectator in this world, you are the composer. And everything you experience is a note responding to the music of your mind. Once you accept that, you stop trying to force life. You start learning how to listen, how to feel, how to align. Because you realize the physical world is not your prison. It's your canvas, and it's waiting for your touch. You've been told that reality is something that happens to you, that you're a product of your environment, shaped by circumstances, defined by the conditions around you. But what if that's all backwards? What if you're not the effect but the cause? What if the world you see outside is nothing more than a reflection of what's happening within, not metaphorically but literally? What if your consciousness isn't reacting to reality, it's creating it? Seth made this astonishingly clear. You create your own reality. Not some of it, all of it. Every detail, every relationship, every so-called coincidence or setback. You are not a passive player in a predetermined script. You are the author, the director, the projector, and the screen. And the script, it's written in thoughts, emotions, beliefs, and intentions. These are not fleeting inner experiences. They are blueprints, energetic instructions sent into the field of possibility, telling matter how to shape itself. Every thought you think is a brushstroke. Every belief you hold is a structural beam in the architecture of your life. You don't manifest what you want, you manifest what you are, what you consistently vibrate, what you emotionally inhabit even when you're not trying. This is why things don't always change when you visualize for a few minutes or repeat affirmations by rote. The universe doesn't respond to surface-level wishing, it responds to depth, to resonance, to the frequency you broadcast when no one's watching. This truth can feel overwhelming at first. If you're creating your own reality, what about the pain you've experienced, the trauma, the things that seemed beyond your control? Seth never denied that suffering is real, but he revealed that even suffering is shaped through layers of belief, not as punishment and not as fault, but as part of a larger learning, a deeper invitation to become conscious of the unconscious. Because until you bring awareness to your deeper patterns, they will keep shaping your life from the shadows. Consciousness does not create reality based on what you wish for. It creates based on what you expect, what you assume, what you prepare for emotionally over and over again. You don't have to become perfect to live this truth, you just have to become aware. Because the moment you realize your inner world is the seed from which outer life grows, you reclaim your power. You stop begging life to change, and start cultivating a new inner atmosphere. You understand that energy precedes form, that feelings are frequencies, that the universe is a mirror, flawless, precise, and always responding to your dominant vibration. Seth described it as an invisible blueprint, one that underlies every visible aspect of your life. Your relationships, your health, your finances, your experiences, all of it arises from the structure of consciousness. And that structure is malleable, it's not locked in. You're not bound by yesterday's thoughts unless you choose to keep repeating them today. Change your thoughts, yes, but more importantly, change the beliefs that fuel them. Change the stories you tell yourself in silence. Change the identity you secretly align with when no one's listening. This isn't magic, it's mechanics, spiritual mechanics. And once you begin to live from that awareness, life becomes less of a reaction and more of a creation. You realize you're not at the mercy of fate. You're designing it in real time. And the more you take ownership of that design, the more the world responds, not with resistance, but with recognition, because reality has been waiting for your clarity. It's not happening to you, it's happening through you. And when you finally see that, everything begins to shift. From the time you were young, you were taught that the world is a battlefield between good and evil. The darkness lurks in people, in places, in forces beyond your understanding. You learned to fear the unknown, to label what was different as dangerous, to believe in a cosmic war playing out on Earth, with you caught in the middle. But what if that war isn't real? What if the entire concept of good versus evil is a misunderstanding born of limited perception? What if evil, as you've been taught to fear it, doesn't actually exist the way you think it does? Seth challenged this fundamental assumption head-on. He revealed that duality, the division between light and dark, good and bad, God and devil, is not an absolute truth, but a perceptual illusion, an artifact of the five senses which can only perceive through contrast. Your eyes see by dividing light from shadow. Your mind organizes reality by naming, judging, splitting things into this or that. But beneath that surface layer of perception there is only unity, wholeness, a single field of consciousness expressing itself through infinite forms and polarities, not to oppose itself, but to know itself. When you label something as evil, what you're really doing is responding to the unknown with fear. You're seeing a fragment of reality taken out of its full context and reacting to it through the lens of judgment. But consciousness, from a higher vantage point, doesn't operate on the same moral scale. It doesn't condemn, it integrates. What you call evil is often misunderstood energy. Distorted, yes, but not disconnected. Misguided, perhaps, but not meaningless. Even the darkest expressions of human behavior arise from pain, ignorance, and disconnection from source. And while that doesn't excuse harm, it helps you begin to understand it from a broader perspective. There is divine intelligence even within the chaos. That doesn't mean you should tolerate abuse or deny your discernment. It means you stop projecting darkness as an external enemy and start recognizing it as an internal imbalance. The monsters you see in the world are often reflections of the parts of yourself you were never allowed to love. The rage you suppress, the grief you bury, the power you gave away. And when these shadows go unacknowledged, they manifest outside of you, wearing faces and names, showing up as villains in the collective play of human evolution. But none of this means evil is fake. It means it's misunderstood. Seth didn't ask you to pretend everything is love and light. He asked you to go deeper, to see with inner eyes, to recognize that what you fear most often carries the key to your expansion, that what you resist in others may point to what you've rejected in yourself. The goal is not to eliminate duality, it's to transcend it. Not by rising above, but by going within. Because when you do, you begin to feel something astonishing, a softening, a presence, a truth that whispers from beneath the noise. There is only consciousness. Consciousness choosing, learning, evolving, sometimes clumsily, sometimes violently, but always moving toward greater awareness, even when it seems like the opposite. And once you trust that, the grip of fear begins to loosen. You stop reacting and start perceiving. You stop blaming and start understanding. You stop dividing the world into heroes and villains and start seeing souls on their path playing out the roles necessary for deeper awakening. The world does not need more judgment. It needs more vision. And you have that vision within you, the ability to see beyond appearances, to witness the divine unfolding even in the places you once turned away from. This is not blind optimism. This is spiritual maturity, the willingness to hold complexity without collapsing into fear, to recognize that light and shadow are not enemies. They are dance partners in the soul's evolution, and you are the space in which they meet, the consciousness that can choose compassion, integration, and truth. You were never meant to fight evil. You were meant to dissolve it by seeing through it, and when you do, you set yourself free. Because the battle was never outside of you, it was always a mirror, and now you can finally lay down the sword. You've been taught to picture God as a figure, an old man with a beard, seated on a throne beyond the clouds, watching your every move. Maybe he's loving, maybe he's angry, but always distant, always separate, always other. This image has been passed down for centuries, embedded into art, scripture and language until it became so familiar that no one questioned it. And yet, at some point, maybe silently, maybe in the middle of a quiet night, you did. You asked yourself, is this really what God is? Not with defiance, but with yearning. A longing for something more real, more intimate, more true. And in that moment, something within you began to awaken. Seth came to dismantle that mythology, not to attack it, but to liberate you from it, to free you from a concept of God that was too small, too human, too rooted in hierarchy and fear. The image of the old man in the sky served a purpose once. It offered comfort, structure, a moral framework. But over time it became a prison, a way to separate the sacred from the self, a way to place the divine somewhere out there, untouchable, unknowable, and always watching with judgment in his eyes. That version of God may have given people something to believe in, but it also kept them from recognizing the truth, that the divine is not a being watching from above, but a presence living through you. Seth didn't ask you to throw out your beliefs. He asked you to expand them, to stretch beyond inherited concepts and enter into direct experience. Because God is not a personality. God is not a man or a woman or a force with preferences, rules, and moods. God is not a noun, God is a verb, a becoming, a living, breathing field of infinite intelligence expressing itself in countless ways, and you are one of them. This means you're not a creation separate from the Creator. You're not a product of divine whim or cosmic accident. You are the divine, localized, a unique focal point of consciousness through which the infinite experiences itself, the ocean pouring through the wave. God is not above you, God is within you, as you, breathing in and out with every moment of your life. And yet, because you were trained to look for God in temples and scriptures and skies, you've often missed the moments when God was whispering directly through your experience. That time your heart swelled with beauty so deep you couldn't explain it, that was God. The stillness you felt when everything went quiet inside and peace flooded in, that was God. The sudden knowing, the inner voice, the feeling of being held when no one else was around, that was God too. Not as an external force, but as the underlying field of love that is never not with you. You see, you've already touched God countless times, you just didn't know it. Because no one told you to look there. No one told you that the divine speaks through sensation, through intuition, through the simple act of being aware. The presence behind your eyes right now, that quiet witness reading these words, is not just your mind. It's the same essence that lives in all things. That presence is the doorway, not to a distant heaven, but to the realization that heaven has always been here. Seth emphasized this over and over again. He called God all that is, a field of becoming, a source that creates, not by command, but by being. God is not a ruler. God is not outside of creation. God is creation. Every molecule, every thought, every emotion. And if God is in everything, then God is also in you. Not just your light, but your shadow. Not just your clarity, but your confusion. Not just your joy, but your grief. The divine is not some sanitized, sterile perfection. The divine includes it all. And so, to experience God, you don't need to go anywhere. You don't need to purify yourself first. You don't need permission. You simply need to become aware, right here, right now, of the breath moving through your lungs, of the heartbeat pulsing beneath your skin, of the stillness beneath your thoughts. That is the temple. That is the altar, and the God you've been searching for is already present in it. This is not just comforting. It's revolutionary. Because when you stop seeing God as someone out there, you stop begging, you stop performing, you stop trying to earn grace and start recognizing that you are grace in motion. This isn't arrogance, it's intimacy. The deep knowing that you and the source are not separate, and never have been. The sun doesn't need to prove it's part of the sky. It just shines. This shift from a distant deity to an indwelling presence changes everything. You stop asking, what does God want from me, and start asking, what does God want through me? You stop waiting for divine intervention and realize you are the intervention, the hands, the voice, the action of the divine in human form. You stop fearing judgment and start trusting your inner guidance, because you recognize it as the voice of the infinite speaking in your unique dialect. And it doesn't have to be grand. Experiencing the true nature of God doesn't always come with thunderclaps or visions. Sometimes it's a quiet knowing, a tear you didn't expect, a sudden burst of laughter that rises for no reason, a sense of peace in the middle of chaos. These moments are not accidents. They're evidence, little doorways into the greater truth that God is not far away and never has been. The veil has only ever been your belief that the veil exists. So now as you move through life, you can begin to feel it. In the wind, in a stranger's eyes, in the warmth of a cup in your hand, in the ache of your own longing. God is not a being you must find. God is the beingness itself, the animating intelligence behind every form. And once you see that, you'll never feel alone again, not because someone's watching you, but because you're finally awake to the truth that the divine has been living through you all along. You don't need to believe in the old myth to feel God's presence. You just need to remember who you are, not a separate creation, but an expression of all that is. And that, Seth would say, is the only truth you ever really needed. The rest was just a story. And now you're ready to write a new one, where God is not waiting for you in the sky, but walking with you, breathing with you, being you, right now. Always. There's a moment, often subtle, sometimes earth-shattering, when something inside you stirs and you begin to question everything you've ever believed. You look around at the world, at its patterns, its rules, its rituals, and it suddenly feels like a dream. Not because it's fake, but because something deeper is starting to awaken within you. A voice that whispers, "There's more to this than what you've been told." But once that voice speaks, you can't unhear it. It echoes in your quiet moments. It haunts your routines. It asks you to look again, not just at the world, but at the lens through which you've been seeing it. Seth never said this world was an illusion in the way some philosophies describe it. He never told you to abandon the physical or deny your experience here. What he revealed was far more nuanced and far more empowering. This world is not a hallucination, it's not a trick, it's not something to escape, but your interpretation of it, your assumptions, your conditioning, your programmed reactions. That is the dream. The veil is not in the world, the veil is in your perception. And the process of awakening is not about transcending the world, but seeing it as it truly is. You were born into a reality that came with pre-written scripts. You inherited beliefs from family, culture, religion, media, education. You were told what success looks like, what love should feel like, what's real, what's possible, what's dangerous, what's safe. And you accepted it, not because you were weak, but because that's what humans do. We learn by absorbing, we survive by conforming. But somewhere along the way, the script became a prison. You forgot that you were the author. You started living the dream as if it were the truth. You forgot to question who wrote it and why. And that's when suffering begins, not from the world itself, but from the stories you've been taught to believe about it. You suffer because you chase meaning in places that were never meant to give it. You suffer because you mistake temporary roles for permanent identities. You suffer because you think you're separate, unworthy or powerless, but those are just chapters in the dream. They're not the final word. They're not the essence of you. Waking up isn't about rejecting your humanity. It's about realizing that you're more than the roles you've played. You're more than the personality you've shaped. You're more than the history you carry. You are the awareness behind all of it. The unchanging presence that watched you grow, that felt every high and low, that silently witnessed every moment without judgment. That presence isn't asleep. It's eternal, and it's waiting for you to recognize it, to merge with it, to live from it. But awakening isn't always gentle. It can feel like losing your grip on everything you thought was real. Old beliefs begin to crumble, relationships shift, priorities rearrange themselves. You may feel disoriented, even lost, because the scaffolding you once relied on, the dream world of shoulds and musts, no longer holds you. And that's terrifying. But it's also liberating, because now you get to rebuild from truth. This world, as Seth described, is a rich, multidimensional expression of consciousness. It's not here to trick you, it's here to reflect you. Every moment is feedback. Every experience is a mirror. The world doesn't happen to you, it happens through you. And as you change your vibration, your thoughts, your beliefs, the world changes in response. You're not waking up from a fake world. You're waking up from the interpretation that told you you were powerless in it. So what does it mean to live awake? It means seeing things as they are, not as you were taught to see them. It means recognizing the symbolic nature of reality, that every moment carries meaning, that every interaction reveals something about your inner state. It means trusting your intuition over tradition, choosing presence over performance, feeling your way forward rather than blindly following maps drawn by others. When you live awake, you realize that the things you once feared were shadows cast by your own unhealed beliefs, that the people who hurt you were acting from their own dreams of separation, that the love you longed for was never missing. It was buried under layers of forgetting. And perhaps most importantly, you realize that the world is alive, not just biologically, but vibrationally. Everything is consciousness. Every tree, every cloud, every street corner is infused with presence. And when you show up with awareness, the world responds in kind. This doesn't mean life stops being challenging, it means the challenges stop defining you. You stop asking, why is this happening to me, and start asking, what is this showing me? Pain becomes a teacher, not a punishment. Uncertainty becomes a doorway, not a threat. And joy, real joy, starts to rise not from what you achieve, but from what you remember. That you are not trapped. You are not small. You are not a dreamer stuck in someone else's vision. You are the dreamer and the dream, the observer and the observed, the creator and the creation. This is why Seth's teachings are so revolutionary. They don't tell you to escape the world. They teach you how to see it clearly, so you can participate in it consciously. They invite you to awaken, not to leave the dream, but to dream with your eyes open, to walk through this world with the understanding that you are shaping it in real time, not with force, but with frequency, not with effort, but with presence. And once you taste this, once you glimpse the clarity of reality without the fog of conditioning, you can never go back. The old dreams lose their grip, the old fears lose their sting. You no longer need to be asleep to survive. You begin to live with your soul in the driver's seat. You begin to speak from a deeper truth. You begin to see the world not as broken, but as awakening alongside you. The dream wasn't wrong. It was incomplete, and now you are waking up, not to escape life, but to enter it fully, with your eyes wide open, your heart unguarded, and your awareness rooted in the truth that nothing was ever outside of you. You are not a character in someone else's story. You are the storyteller, and the pen is in your hands. Everything you've ever been taught about reality has come through the filter of your 5 physical senses: sight, hearing, taste, touch, and smell. These senses are remarkable, no doubt. They help you navigate the world, form memories, build relationships, and experience beauty. But they are also deeply limited. They show you a fraction of what actually exists. They're like keyholes, offering tiny glimpses into a vast mansion of experience. And somewhere along the way, you were convinced that if you couldn't see it, touch it, or measure it, it wasn't real. That's the greatest illusion of all. Because there's more, so much more. Seth spoke of something extraordinary, what he called the inner senses. Not metaphorical or symbolic, but real faculties that are just as valid as your physical ones. Inner senses like direct knowing, inner hearing, telepathic communication, clairvoyance, and emotional understanding that transcends words. These inner senses are not gifts only some people have. They are birthrights. Dormant abilities within you, waiting for recognition and use. And once you begin to engage with them, your relationship with reality begins to change in ways that the intellect can't explain. Your outer senses anchor you to the physical world. Your inner senses open you to the non-physical, the energetic, the multidimensional layers of existence that are happening simultaneously with what you see in front of you. You don't have to believe in anything to use them. In fact, you already have. Every time you felt something before it happened, every time you knew someone was thinking about you before they called, every time you sensed someone's energy before they spoke a word, you were using your inner senses. The problem is, you were taught to doubt them. You were told that intuition was unreliable, that imagination wasn't real, that inner knowing was wishful thinking. So you turned the volume down. You learned to ignore the soft whisper in favor of the loud logic, and yet the whisper never stopped. It's still there, guiding, nudging, aligning, if you're willing to listen again. Intuition is one of the most misunderstood of these senses. It's not a feeling, it's not a guess, it's a direct interface with higher levels of consciousness. Intuition doesn't speak in linear sentences, it speaks in symbols, nudges, visions, a sudden sense of yes or no, without explanation. It bypasses the ego entirely and connects you with the part of you that already knows. That's why intuitive truth feels different. It doesn't need defending. It lands like a tuning fork, clear and undeniable. And the more you act on it, the stronger it becomes. Inspiration is another inner sense, one that connects you directly to source, creativity. You don't come up with inspiration, you receive it, you channel it, you align with it. Those moments of sudden insight when an idea bursts into your awareness fully formed. That's not random. That's your inner sense of inspiration giving you access to a broader field of intelligence. Seth described this as tapping into probable realities, versions of events and ideas that already exist in the quantum field, just waiting for you to tune your vibration to match. Then there's direct knowing, a strange and powerful inner sense that defies logic completely. You don't deduce, you don't analyze, you simply know. And that knowing doesn't come from evidence, it comes from resonance. You feel it in your chest, your gut, your bones. It's the voice that says this is true, even when you have no proof. And often, it's only later that the proof arrives, when your inner reality begins to shape the outer one. Because when you trust the inner senses, life reorganizes to support that truth. The inner senses are not a replacement for the outer ones. They're a complement. Together they create a fuller, more accurate picture of reality. And the more you use them, the more you begin to feel the world rather than just observing it. You begin to sense the energy in a room before anyone speaks. You begin to detect the layers behind someone's words. You begin to pick up on the invisible threads connecting events, people, and timeline. The world becomes alive, vibrant, multidimensional, and you begin to realize that what you once called invisible was only invisible because you weren't taught to see it. Now, if you're wondering how to activate these inner senses consciously, the key is simple: stillness. Not silence necessarily, but stillness of attention. The outer senses are loud. They constantly bombard you with input. But the inner senses speak in subtler tones. They require presence, receptivity, a quiet mind, and an open heart. That's where meditation becomes essential, not as a practice of escape, but as a tool of connection, not to leave the world, but to meet it more deeply. So here is a meditation, a gentle way to open the doorway. Close your eyes. Let your breath slow naturally, without effort. Feel the weight of your body resting. Let your awareness soften, not narrow, but expand. Imagine a space behind your eyes, not empty, but full of presence. This is the seat of your inner senses. Now bring to mind a question, something you've been holding in your heart. Don't try to solve it, just hold it gently. Ask for insight. Ask to see what's beyond the surface. And then listen, not with your ears, but with your being. Notice the sensations, the images, the feelings that begin to arise. Don't analyze. Don't judge. Just receive. You may hear nothing. You may feel only stillness. That's okay. You've planted the seed. Often the insight arrives later. In a conversation, a dream, a sudden knowing while walking down the street. The inner senses don't obey clocks. They respond to trust. As you continue this practice, day by day, the veil begins to thin. You begin to sense what others cannot. You begin to navigate life not by calculation, but by alignment. You start to live from the inside out, and in doing so, you awaken to a deeper truth. That your inner world is not a private echo chamber, it's a vast, luminous gateway into the greater field of consciousness. Seth reminded you again and again that you are more than your body, more than your intellect, more than what you were told to be. And your inner senses are the bridge back to that truth. They reconnect you with your multidimensional self. They remind you that reality isn't just what's visible, it's what's vibrating, what's felt, what's known without explanation. This is your invitation to remember, to turn inward, not for escape, but for revelation, to see beyond the surface, to feel more deeply, to trust more fully. The world you've known is just a sliver of what's available, and the doorway to more has always been inside you. Now all you need to do is walk through. You've spent much of your life believing that something is missing, that you are on a journey to fix yourself, to find yourself, to become worthy of something greater. You've carried the weight of doubt like a quiet burden, always wondering if you're enough, if you're close enough to the truth, if maybe, just maybe, you've fallen too far to ever return to whatever wholeness you were supposed to come from. But what if none of that was ever true? What if your entire story of being lost, broken, unworthy, or incomplete was never more than a fog placed over the brilliance of what you already are? And what if now is the moment you begin to remember? Not learn, not acquire, but remember that you were never anything less than miraculous. Seth spoke not just of the soul, not just of consciousness, but of the miraculous nature of your very being. Not as flattery, not as wishful thinking, but as a truth so fundamental, so absolute, that everything else you've ever believed about yourself begins to dissolve in its light. You are not a mistake in progress. You are not a fragment searching for its other half. You are not a sinner trying to earn grace. You are the divine source experiencing itself in human form. And every part of you, your cells, your emotions, your thoughts, your breath, is saturated with that divinity. You don't carry God like something outside of you. You are the expression of God in this form, in this life, right now. There is nothing missing, nothing broken, nothing waiting for permission to be worthy. Every atom of your body pulses with the same intelligence that spins galaxies. The same awareness that breathes stars into being is the awareness behind your eyes, reading these words, wondering if this could possibly be true, and it is. It has always been. You are not on a path to become God. That's the great misunderstanding. You are on a path to remember that you already are, not in a blasphemous sense, but in the most reverent one, because God is not a being above you, judging your progress. God is the very essence within you, longing to be remembered, expressed, embodied, not worshipped from afar, but known from within. And yet it's understandable that you've forgotten. The world you were born into was built on amnesia. You were taught to diminish your light, to defer to authority, to question your instincts, to seek outside what was always inside. You were given names, labels, and limits. You were handed scripts and told, "This is who you are." And over time you wore those scripts like skin. You looked in the mirror and saw a personality, not presence. You measured your worth by what you achieved, how you looked, how you were treated, and in doing so you began to shrink, not because you lacked anything, but because you believed you did. But deep down something remained untouched, a spark, a stillness, a knowing that never forgot who you were. Even in your darkest nights it was there. Not judging, not pushing, just patiently waiting for you to turn inward and feel. Not your emotions, but the space beneath them, the truth beneath the noise, the miracle beneath the mask. That miracle is not a future version of you. It's the you that exists right now, beneath the programming, beneath the wounds, beneath the striving. It doesn't need fixing, it needs unveiling. It needs permission to rise. And Seth's teachings were all about that unveiling, about peeling away the illusion of separation and returning you to the full awareness of your own divinity. This doesn't mean you'll never feel doubt again. It doesn't mean you'll always feel confident or radiant or whole. Being miraculous doesn't mean being perfect. It means remembering that even your imperfections are sacred, that even your confusion is holy, that every part of your journey, the detours, the heartbreak, the wrong turns, was part of a greater design, not to punish you, but to awaken you. Because sometimes it's in the forgetting that the remembering becomes most powerful. You don't value light until you've known darkness. You don't recognize wholeness until you've felt fractured. You don't awaken to your divinity until you've explored what it means to feel separate from it. And in that paradox lies the beauty of being human. You are the divine dreaming itself awake. Every breath you take is a miracle in motion. Every desire you feel is life expanding through you. Every tear you've cried has watered the soil of your becoming. And every time you've looked into the mirror and not recognized your own greatness, the universe has whispered back, "You are more than you know." But this isn't about ego. It's not about claiming superiority. It's about claiming responsibility. When you remember who you are, not as a concept but as a felt reality, you begin to live differently. You stop waiting to be chosen. You stop waiting for proof. You stop asking for permission to be powerful, and you start being that power. Quietly, gently, unapologetically. You begin to speak truth not to convince others but because it vibrates in your bones. You begin to walk into rooms and change the energy without saying a word. You begin to heal not by trying but by being. Because the frequency of a soul that remembers its divinity becomes a healing presence for everything it touches. This is what Seth meant when he spoke of the multidimensional self. You are not just the version of you that shows up in daily life. You are infinite layers of awareness, timelines, selves, realities. And when you tap into that truth, when you live from the knowing that you are already whole, already divine, already miraculous, then life begins to mirror that back to you. Synchronicities align, doors open, connections deepen, not because you've become someone new, but because you've stopped pretending to be someone smaller. The world needs more people who remember, not people who preach or prove or perform, but people who embody, who walk with quiet confidence, grounded in the truth that they are vessels of infinite light, that their very existence is enough, that their presence exactly as it is the miracle they've been waiting for. So if you've doubted yourself, good. It means you're ready to question the story, ready to see through the mask, ready to peel back the layers and rediscover what was never missing. You don't have to seek the divine. You are already the evidence of it. And the more you live from that knowing, the more the world around you begins to change, not because you force it, but because reality responds to identity. And when your identity is rooted in truth, reality has no choice but to reflect that truth back to you. You are not small, you are not broken, you are not incomplete. You are the miracle becoming conscious of itself. You are the answer to your own prayer. You are the breath of the cosmos clothed in human form. Here not to earn divinity but to express it, to be it. And now the only question that remains is this: are you ready to remember? Everything in the world right now seems to be shifting. Institutions that once seemed immovable are cracking, traditions are unraveling, systems are breaking down. It's as if the scaffolding of reality is collapsing in slow motion, and for many that collapse feels terrifying. But for those who are beginning to remember, it feels like something else entirely. It feels like awakening. It feels like the dream dissolving, the illusion falling away. It feels like truth emerging from behind the veil of centuries. And this is why Seth's messages, once whispered in quiet sessions through Jane Roberts, once dismissed as esoteric or fringe, now pulse with more urgency and relevance than ever before. Because what Seth said decades ago is what the soul is now screaming. You were never just human. You've lived most of your life playing a role defined by your body, your name, your culture, your memories. You've walked through life with a story wrapped around you like a costume, believing that story was the whole truth. You've called yourself by the name others gave you. You've identified with the thoughts that passed through your mind. You've treated your personality as your essence. And yet, beneath all of that, something deeper has always been waiting, a part of you that cannot be named, a presence that cannot be reduced to labels or roles or timelines, a being that has existed long before this lifetime and will continue long after it ends. Seth's voice was not just a voice from another realm. It was a mirror reflecting back the truth that lives within you. He did not speak as a separate authority, but as a future echo of your own expanded self. A multidimensional being reminding you that you are one too. And what he offered was never about creating a new religion or belief system. It was an invitation, a call to remember. Not to become something different, but to return to the awareness of what you've always been. You are not your job, you are not your past, you are not even your thoughts. You are consciousness, fluid, boundless, radiant. And you are operating through this physical body, yes, but you extend far beyond it. You are part of a larger tapestry, an interwoven network of timelines, selves, and probabilities. Every version of you that could exist does exist in its own stream. Every choice you've made has echoed across dimensions. And this version of you, the one reading these words, is the focal point your awareness is currently inhabiting. But just because your attention is here doesn't mean you are limited to here. Seth spoke of probable selves, of the eternal nature of the soul, of the fact that you are not trapped in linear time or fixed form. You are dreaming this reality, but you're not confined to it. And this truth is no longer a theory. It's becoming lived experience. More and more people are waking up from the hypnosis of separation. They are feeling the threads that connect them to other lifetimes, other worlds, other aspects of themselves. They are sensing energy in ways they can't explain. They are hearing the call to go inward, to trust the unseen, to remember the unspoken. You were told that being human meant being limited, that life was about survival, achievement, and eventual decay. You were told that your body defines you, that death is the end, that meaning comes from external validation. But every part of your being knows that isn't true. You felt it in your dreams, in your moments of stillness, in the sudden synchronicities that defy logic. You felt the timelessness of a moment when everything stood still. You felt the presence of something greater moving through you, guiding you, loving you even when you didn't know how to love yourself. This presence is not outside of you, it is you, the bigger you, the multidimensional you, and the collapsing illusion of the world is making room for this truth to take center stage. All the identities that once seemed so permanent, nationalities, professions, belief systems, roles, are being stripped away, not to leave you empty but to reveal your fullness, not to leave you lost, but to help you remember that you were never just a label, never just a body, never just a human. You are the dreamer and the dream, the creator and the created. You are a thread in the cosmic fabric and the weaver of that fabric at the same time. And when Seth said, "You create your own reality," he wasn't offering a technique. He was stating a fundamental law of consciousness. Reality is not something that happens to you. It's something that unfolds through you, in response to your vibration, your beliefs, your state of awareness. And as you begin to remember who you are, you stop trying to manipulate the outer world. You realize that true change comes from within, not as a cliché but as a vibrational fact. You begin to embody your power quietly. You stop chasing validation, you stop fighting for control. You begin to live as a center of light, calm, aware, unshaken by the chaos around you. You begin to be the presence that others feel and remember in your company. This is not about ego, this is about essence. When you live from your multidimensional self, you don't become superior, you become authentic. You become grounded, soft-spoken, fierce with love. You stop performing and start expressing. And the illusion of the world, its fear, its scarcity, its separation, begins to crumble around you, not because you're escaping it, but because you've outgrown it. Right now, the planet is going through a collective identity crisis. Humanity is awakening, but in the early stages of awakening there is confusion. Old structures are fighting to survive. Fear is amplifying. Division is intensifying. But all of this is part of the death throes of the illusion. And in the midst of it, you are being asked to remember, to hold the frequency of your true self. Not the version of you shaped by trauma or expectation, but the version of you that existed before you were born, the timeless self, the soul self. This remembering doesn't happen all at once. It happens in moments, in glimpses, in flashes of clarity followed by waves of uncertainty. But each time you remember, you anchor more of your truth into the world. Each time you choose awareness over reaction, presence over panic, love over fear, you strengthen the bridge between dimensions. You become a living portal through which higher consciousness enters this realm. That is your role now, not to convince, not to convert, but to be, to embody the light you've always carried, to walk with grace in a world still remembering, to shine without needing to be seen. And as you do, you become a signal to others. You become the quiet reassurance that they are not alone, that they are not crazy, that they too are waking up from the dream. This is the real revolution, not political, not religious, not even philosophical. It's vibrational. It's happening beneath the surface. It's happening in hearts and homes and quiet conversations. It's happening in the soft spaces where people are choosing to heal, to release, to remember. And you are part of it, not as an observer, but as a catalyst. You don't need to know the whole path. You just need to take the next step in alignment with your soul. You don't need to save the world. You just need to become the world you wish to see. Because when you live from the truth of your multidimensional nature, reality bends around your presence. Miracles occur, patterns dissolve, and the old world built on fear and forgetting no longer has power over you. You were never just human. That was the mask, the training wheels, the dream. You are consciousness. You are the divine in motion. You are the echo of eternity in a body made of stardust. And now more than ever you are being called to remember, not as an idea, but as a lived reality. So let yourself remember. Let yourself expand. Let yourself soften into the truth that you've always known but were afraid to trust. You are not here to fit in. You are here to awaken. You are not here to survive. You are here to shine. You are not becoming something new. You are returning to what you have always been. And that, quietly, powerfully, undeniably, is everything. This awakening isn't about leaving your humanness behind, it's about elevating it. You didn't come into this life to escape your body, your emotions, your challenges. You came to infuse them with remembrance, to bring divinity into the details, to walk the grocery aisles, raise children, heal wounds, start revolutions of love. Not from a place of forgetting, but from full consciousness of who and what you are. That's what it means to live as a multidimensional creator. Not to float above reality, but to illuminate it from within. Your humanity is not the opposite of your divinity. It's the canvas your divinity paints through. You see, even now, as you breathe, trillions of processes unfold in your body, without effort, without fear. Cells communicate, organs respond, atoms resonate with frequencies both known and unknown. Your body is not just flesh, it's intelligence, it's memory. It's a sacred vessel designed to translate spiritual truth into tangible form. The idea that you are just human is a kind of forgetting, an amnesia born of conditioning, not truth. Because your humanness is part of your multidimensional nature. It's the interface, the bridge, the focal point through which timeless awareness becomes experience. And now the time has come to walk this earth awake, to live not in reaction but in revelation. To remember not only with your mind, but with your breath, your choices, your presence. You were never meant to live small. You were never meant to shrink yourself to fit systems built on forgetting. You were meant to crack those systems open, not with violence, but with vibration. Not with shouting, but with shining. And as you rise into this truth, others will rise too. Not because you told them how, but because your very being reminded them of what they are, of what they've always been, of what they're here to become.